Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with all of you, and an honor to be here with all of you for this evening's performance put on by the Origins Project. I should say I'm Lawrence Krauss. I'm the director of the Origins Project, and we are always very excited to see the response of the people here at the university and in the community to the programs we put on. And tonight's program is particularly fun, I hope. And about 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago, Stanford University asked Richard and I if we'd go there and do a conversation. And it was going to be a moderated conversation. And Richard said, no moderator. And his point was well taken. He said, a moderator always stops things when they get most interesting. So we tried it, and it worked. And we thought we'd try a conversation here tonight along those lines. So there will be no moderator. And the format will be as follows. We're going to have a conversation, a wide-ranging one, and we're not sure where it's going to go. And then after that, we'll take an intermission for people to calm down. And then we'll take questions from the audience. And again, that time period isn't yet fixed. It depends how interesting your questions are. And so that's the way it's going to go. And I now, of course, have the honor and privilege of introducing someone who needs no introduction. Richard Dawkins was the Charles Simonyi Chair in the Public Understanding of Science at Oxford, but he's also known throughout the world as one of the greatest writers about science living today, or perhaps who's ever lived. He has a following which is remarkable, and I can attest to that. 2 days ago, we were walking around campus together, and I saw people fainting. People came up and shook our hands and were nervous, and Richard produces that. I was going to say it was like walking around campus with Moses. But the difference is that I'm absolutely certain that Richard Dawkins exists. I actually, the first time I interacted with Richard was a one-way interaction. I had just written my first book, and my publishers had produced a short volume by Richard called River Out of Eden. And I wrote my very first fan letter to Richard. He didn't reply, but we've become good friends ever since, and it's my true honor to welcome to the stage Richard Dawkins. Thanks for coming, Richard, and I know everyone's here to see you, so that's okay. I've made some notes just in case, but we'll see where this goes. Now, the title for this evening is Something from Nothing, which sounds quite self-indulgent, since it's also the subtitle of my new book. But it's not completely for that reason. In fact, Something for Nothing goes, I think, and we think, beyond that. And I wanted to start, Richard, by asking you, sort of, in the context of evolution, what something from nothing means to you.
Charles Darwin solved one of the greatest riddles that the human mind has ever solved, which is how you get something from nothing, in the sense of how you get the immense complexity and diversity and beauty and elegance of life, and perhaps above all, how you get the powerful illusion of design that life shows, starting not quite from nothing, but starting from extreme simplicity. So before Darwin came along, it would have been extremely hard to believe that you could possibly explain how you get a human brain, a human eye, a horse's leg, a swift's wing, how you could get such beautiful and apparently elegantly designed things by purely the laws of physics acting out over a very long time from very simple beginnings. So getting something from nothing, Charles Darwin gives us all confidence. Charles Darwin showed that what must have seemed the most difficult problem of getting something from nothing was soluble. He solved it, and his successors have been simply fleshing out his explanation ever since. But after Darwin, it's no longer possible for anybody, any reasonable person, to say, oh, I simply can't believe you could get something so complicated as that.
So by reasonable person, you're not talking about the Republican candidates then, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. No, anyway, well, we'll try and offend as many people as we can tonight, but I think you're not being fair to Darwin. I think in a sense it's something from nothing. I mean, completely nothing. In the sense that every time take humans, we weren't around, perhaps more than maybe 5 to 10 million years ago. And so, in a sense, every time a new species is created, it's something from nothing.
Well, it's not from nothing, because it's from an antecedent species, and even the evolutionary process, the process that Darwin discovered, didn't start from nothing. It had to start from, well, a reasonably complicated chemical beginning, which was the first self-replicating molecule. You can't, I mean, natural selection can't get going until you have genetics, and so you've got to have genetics. And that's not a trivial problem, and it's a problem that actually hasn't yet been solved.
Well, in fact, actually, that's kind of interesting, because it's true that many people think that evolution has to do with the origin of life, but it's really the origin of the diversity of life.
Yes.
And in fact, the famous final paragraph of his book, it basically tries to state that.
Yes. No, you have to start from a genetics, and that's one of the big gaps in our knowledge at the moment. Nobody knows how that started. The laws of chemistry somehow had to give rise to a self-replicating molecule. Once you've got that, at least a sufficiently accurately self-replicating molecule, then evolution takes off. And then the whole of the panoply of life, the whole diversity of life, and things like you and me eventually come into existence. But you have got to start with a genetics, and that pushes it into the domain of chemistry. And then before that, before chemistry, we push back into the domain of physics, where you guys take over.
But let's keep pushing on that point, because at some point, I thought of this in the context of the universe, and we may talk about it in a while, but there was no life on Earth when it was created, and there was no life potentially for maybe a few 100 million years. But then there was life. And so there's the moment when you go from chemistry to biology. It seems to me at some point that for many people, in fact, when they talk about something from nothing again, especially those who feel that the something requires a creator, that the origin of life itself, that is the creation of something from nothing.
Yeah. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and we don't know when life began, but probably after about 500 million years, but probably around about 4 billion years. For the next couple of billion years, there were nothing but bacteria. And then, so life that you couldn't see without a microscope. And then life started getting sort of big and interesting, really only about 500 million years ago, at the time of the Cambrian explosion. Biology, as I said, hands over to chemistry as we push back. Round about 4 billion
back at that
years.
moment, which and it's clear we don't yet understand how that transition occurs. But it seems to me, if you wanted to think into that moment is a perfect example of how the laws of nature can create something from nothing, namely life from non-life, which is a dramatic change.
It's a dramatic change, and it was the creation of genetics. That was the key point. The creation by the laws of chemistry of the first gene. And it probably wasn't DNA, by the way. It would have been something simpler than DNA. DNA has been called a high-tech replicator, a high-tech genetic molecule. So probably DNA had a forerunner, a sort of John the Baptist molecule.
Well, we'll get there. I think the question. So people could rightfully say, how would you respond? I suspect I know how, but how would you respond? So people say, look, we don't understand the origin of life on Earth, and therefore God must have done it.
Even theologians don't buy that. I mean, sophisticated theologians. But it's what they call the God of the gaps argument. It's pushing God into the few remaining gaps in our understanding. Before Darwin came along, the whole of life was one big gap, one gigantic gap. And now we're pushed back to the origin of life, this chemical event, and that is a gap which will be filled. Even if it isn't filled, it would be bad logic, bad science, bad philosophy to say, oh, I don't understand it, therefore God did it. I mean, that's a pathetically bad piece of arguing.
It's a lazy argument, certainly.
It's a lazy argument. It doesn't even explain anything, of course, because it leaves open explaining where God came from. And so, I mean, the beauty of what Darwin did was to show how you can get godlike things, I mean, complicated things like human brains, how you could get godlike things starting from almost nothing. So to suddenly re-import a godlike thing at the beginning of the process is just a cowardly evasion of scientific responsibility.
Okay, now let's see. How would you make it? We actually, last time you were here, it was for one of our workshops on the origins of life, where we actually began to talk about the chemistry that might be responsible for not producing DNA but RNA, which is thought to be the precursor. And we're getting very close. Do you think in your lifetime we'll understand we'll get the transition from organic chemistry to biology?
I do think so. However, I would make what I think is quite an interesting point. I've made it before. It is possible that this event we're talking about, this chemical event, was an exceedingly improbable event. It's possible that since we think there are about 10 to the 22, you tell me, stars in the universe, some very, very high number of
about that, yeah.
And many of them probably have planets. If you want to believe, as some people do, that life on this planet is unique, if you want to believe that we're alone in the universe, then what many people don't realize if they believe that is that that automatically commits you to the view that the origin of life was a quite staggeringly improbable event. That has to be true because the number of opportunities around the universe for life to have originated is so large. And what that would mean is that chemists who are trying to solve the riddle of the origin of life on this planet are totally and utterly wasting their time, because we don't want a plausible theory. What we're looking for is an implausible theory, if you want to believe that life originated only once. Well, I don't believe that. I don't believe that we're looking for an implausible theory, and that is tantamount to saying that I believe the universe is crawling with life. On the other hand, because that argument depends upon the sheer number of available planets, crawling with life could still mean there could be a billion independent origins of life, a billion islands of life out there, and yet they could be still incredibly rare, because a billion is a tiny number compared to the 10 to the 22.
Yeah, that's one of the things, of course, that where cosmology comes in, that one of the things that, but it relates to evolution too, because the thing that makes evolution so difficult for many people to appreciate, from my experience and I'm sure from yours, is that life has been around for a long time, and a human time scale is very short, and it's very difficult to imagine such long time scale. So even if rare events happen in the evolution of life, with 4.5 billion years, there's lots of time for many rare events to happen. Similarly, in the universe, the thing that people don't realize is that rare events happen all the time because the universe is big and old. And the example I've used probably on this stage before